You ready?
All right, good morning. Morning. I'd like to thank everyone for coming this morning. We knew we'd be getting a lot of calls on behalf of parish government this morning. My office filed a lawsuit against Port Nola. The lawsuit sets forth facts, and it's our opinion and belief, based on all the submissions that we submitted to the court, that Port Nola simply does not have jurisdiction to operate a shipping container facility in St. Bernard Parish. I'm going to go through a little bit of the lawsuit. The lawsuit's 45 pages. All of y'all should have a copy. I ask y'all to take a look at that, read it. It's very thorough. We do have some exhibits also attached to the lawsuit. Y'all can look at copies of that. We spent quite a bit of time researching. I want to thank my office, thank my team, thank David Gerald, one of my civil litigators, for all the hard work. I'd like to thank President McGinnis. He is willing and grateful and certainly is standing behind us, as does every councilman up here. I thank all the leaders. I thank Sheriff Coleman. This all came together very quickly, and we think it's very important to the taxpaying citizens of St. Bernard that St. Bernard government asserts their rights to claim that Port Nola is a port authority that has no jurisdiction in St. Bernard, as I said. St. Bernard Port Authority, we have our own port here. We pay taxes to our port here. And we expect our port to operate within the borders of St. Bernard Parish, as was created by the legislature. I'm going to go through it real quick. The suit requests a few things. First, that an injunction be issued. We're requesting an injunction be issued preventing Port Nola from moving forward with their proposed container facility within the borders of St. Bernard Parish. Second, we ask that a judgment be issued declaring that Port Nola does not have jurisdiction to operate in St. Bernard Parish. Third, as part of that process, we ask that the cooperative endeavor agreements that was signed between Port Nola and the St. Bernard Port be declared null and void. I'm going to go over that real quick. And I'm going to just touch on a few things because the petition's so long that I think I want to draw your attention to, and also the general public. But the port legislation, as we researched it, we realized it went back to the 1800s. And in the 1800s, clearly there was some indications in the legislative history that there was a tri-parish jurisdiction for the Port of New Orleans, Jefferson, St. Bernard, and New Orleans. And there's some indication that that wasn't that the case, and that is kind of how it operated at that time. But let's fast forward, right, to 1960. 1960, the state legislature created the St. Bernard Port. Okay, 1960. The language of the 1960 legislation, for lack of a better word, it just wasn't very good. And there was a lot of dispute from that 1960 legislation whether or not St. Bernard had its own port or whether or not New Orleans still operated or could operate in St. Bernard. Because it was not certain, there was a lawsuit filed in 1989, and you'll see this in the petition that we filed. The 1989 litigation concerned a contractor who sued to build a facility within St. Bernard Parish, and they didn't know who they had to pay. Did they have to pay St. Bernard or Port New Orleans? Well, that litigation went up on appeal, and basically the judge ultimately ruled that that money went to the Port of New Orleans, that the 1960 legislation did not clearly identify and provide St. Bernard with an international port. St. Bernard had a port, but the issue in that 89 legislation was that it was not an international port for international commerce. 1992, while that litigation was ongoing, it still hadn't been ruled on, we had three great legislators here in St. Bernard Parish. We had Senator Sammy Nunes. We had then Representative Ken O'Dney was in Baton Rouge, and we had Tommy Warner. And those three gentlemen went to Baton Rouge in 1992. And in 1992, they passed legislation. And that 1992 legislation clearly identified that St. Bernard has its own international port. And I wish we could thank them even more today than ever. And when I presented this to President McGinnis, he was excited, he was glad, and we pushed forward on the research now that we know we have our own international port as of 1992. So if we got our own port in 1992, how did we get here? How does Port Nola come down to St. Bernard and execute an agreement and run a shipping facility on their own without any input from St. Bernard Parish? I'll tell you, the research and the petition lays out in 2004, St. Bernard and New Orleans signed a cooperative endeavor agreement. That's in 2004. It's a very vague agreement. You'll see it. And it just says we're going to work together on future projects. Nothing specific at all. Fast forward, nothing happened from 2004 to 2017. Now we fast forward to 2017. There was a First Amendment to the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement. Again, no specific project. Both entities, political subdivisions, signed off on it. And it basically discussed two parcels of land. We can't make much out of exactly what was going on and why they needed to execute that. And then we fast forward to 2022. That's the big, when we talk about the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement, that was a game changer for St. Bernard Parish. It was that 2022 Cooperative Endeavor Agreement. That Cooperative Endeavor Agreement is quite lengthy, discusses specific plans, and basically, in essence, allows contractually for St. Bernard to move out the way, the Port Authority in St. Bernard, and New Orleans can now have the rights to the land. There was a lot of land swapping going on. There was payments going back and forth. And from what we gather, the understanding now is that Port Nola can now operate a shipping facility in St. Bernard on their own without any input from St. Bernard Parish officials or the St. Bernard Port because of a cooperative endeavor agreement that was signed in 2022. The problems and why we filed this lawsuit and what's critical in this lawsuit is that a political subdivision of the state of Louisiana is the St. Bernard Port Authority. That political subdivision cannot contractually give away its jurisdiction. Whether it's an appropriate analogy, the analogy I would like to draw, our sheriff, Sheriff Pullman, cannot divest himself of his jurisdiction and allow another sheriff to come operate in St. Bernard. Our Port Authority is a political subdivision of the state of Louisiana, and we do not believe they can contractually give away their jurisdiction to the Port of New Orleans, step aside, and then allow New Orleans to come down here and operate within the St. Bernard jurisdiction. The Cooperative Endeavor Agreement also, when you read it, you're going to see a $1.5 million payment from the Port of New Orleans to the Port of St. Bernard. That $1.5 million payment is, for all practical purposes, a non-compete agreement. Basically, we're going to give you all the money. You step aside. You can't compete with the New Orleans port. We're going to run a container facility, and you can't compete for 8 years. Well, clearly, a political subdivision, one, should not be taking money from another political subdivision. Clearly, they shouldn't be taking it from a perspective of a non-compete clause. They're political subdivisions. They can't make profit. They can't collect money. I mean, they can collect money, but they can't earn a profit. So what's the non-compete for? So that really looks bad. I don't think it's going to hold up legally, and it's what we asserted to the judge to support the fact that the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement signed between the two ports is not legal, it's null and void for the reasons I just outlined, is that one port cannot contractually agree to give away its jurisdiction. Lastly, we pay taxes in St. Bernard for our port. And the citizens pay taxes to a political subdivision. And what we do not want is the political subdivision to whom we pay taxes to take our money as tax-paying citizens and then give that responsibility to another political subdivision. There's just something not right about that. And it reinforces the fact that we have our own port with our own exclusive international jurisdiction to handle shipping. And, that's why we're here today. I'm going to, the two council persons at large, I'm going to ask them, they just want to have a brief comment to you all, and then I'll take a few questions if y'all have any, and then President McGinnis will say a few words. But first, I'll call Councilman Lewis, real quick.
Thank you, Perry. You know, we just want to thank our district attorney's office, their staff, and everybody involved in researching this and protecting St. Bernard Parish in the interest of the residents of St. Bernard Parish. It means a lot. Today is a big day for us because St. Bernard, we want to control our own destiny and not have it controlled by another parish. So to our district attorney, our parish president, to my fellow council members, thank all of y'all for the work and the research that y'all have done.
Good morning, Council at Large Carrie Calais. I just want to, thank Mr. Nicosia for having us here today. I'm proud to stand up here today with our district attorney, with our parish president, with our sheriff, our assessor, our clerk of court, and our entire council. And I'm asking the citizens of St. Bernard to stand with us as well. In order to protect our citizens, we have to have a seat at this table. And I think that today will be a game changer in that. And I'm looking forward to working with all of these people to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. Again, just in closing, thank everyone for being here. Thank President McGinnis for being here. And if there's something I could clear up, I'll do that real quick. Does anybody have a question about something in particular? Yes.
Paul, we have a job to do, and it's to protect the citizens of St. Bernard Parish. As I sit here today, I cannot put aside the legal questions. Right? We are under strict orders from the district attorney's office to make sure that this petition stands alone. Right? This is nothing to do about any activity or port activity on the river. It's about who has jurisdiction. And our protection today that our district attorney and his staff are trying to ensure is that we control the activities on the river.
You in the past have said that you thought that any of the movement forces could be enforced. It's premature because more environmental study needed to be done. I think you were also asking that there be a connector road from I-510 to the port. You still stand by those concerns?
Sure, but today is not about those concerns. Today's about the jurisdiction in St. Bernard Parish.
Let me be clear. You bring up some of those questions, and of course there was other litigation involved, right, in this case that our office got involved in at the request of President McGinnis. It's still pending. It's still pending. But that's completely separate and apart. Once we got into the litigation and we did our research, it became very, very clear to my legal department that we have a huge problem on our hands when an entity, a political subdivision outside of their jurisdiction are trying to operate in another jurisdiction. So this is a completely separate, it stands on its own, as President McGinnis said. It's a petition regarding jurisdiction. And, we're not here to talk about environmental studies. That has nothing to do with this litigation, whether there's a roadway, nothing to do with this litigation. This has to do with St. Bernard Parish, our port, our political subdivision, and our right to operate within our own jurisdiction without New Orleans coming down here, Port New Orleans. Yes.
How long have you guys been working on the litigation? When did you decide to do this? And also that 2022 agreement, are any of the people who were a part of that still today?
It's my understanding the couple of the port commissioners from the 2022 are still on the port now. I think there's a couple of them, if I'm not mistaken, still there. I think at least two that I am thinking about off the top of my head. But I'd have to look at it and look at those minutes again to accurately say whether it was, if the number 2 is correct. And what was your other question?
When did you guys decide?
Oh, this has been ongoing. This is not like, we discovered, started doing this research probably a couple of months ago. And, you have to take your time. You have to research it. You're talking about, researching legislative history back to the 1800s. And that's what we had to do. So I would say we've been probably looking at it now for a couple of months. And at some point, you get enough information and enough research. And President McGinnis, we sat with him to discuss this. He was aware the entire time that we were looking at this issue. And he was, yes, definitely. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. So that's how we got here today. St. Bernard Parish government. Is at the direction of St. Bernard Parish government. They actually filed a lawsuit requesting what I stated earlier, right? The injunction that they can't operate in St. Bernard. It requests that a judgment be issued declaring that the Port of New Orleans has no jurisdiction in St. Bernard Parish. So it's not a damages lawsuit, right? It's not, we want this, we want damages. No, we want a judge to rule that New Orleans has no jurisdiction in St. Bernard Parish, and whatever cooperative endeavor agreement they executed, they cannot gain jurisdiction by executing a contract.
Would that have the effect of a temporary injunction for any work that they plan?
They would have to follow the judge's order. That's what I would hope would happen. I would hope a judge would rule in our favor, and everything would have to stop.
The injunction is not part of this file.
Yes, we filed for an injunction, and we filed for a declaratory judgment, it's called, from an actual judgment ordering that there is no jurisdiction.
For any St. Bernard Parish people, would you say that this shipping facility is a popular idea?
Yeah, I don't know if they want to. I don't think that's a issue today that we want to comment on. They can do that on their own outside of this press conference. I just wanted to answer any questions related to this actual litigation. Make sure y'all aware. If you do not have a copy of the petition, the parish government and their public relations department will send out a copy of the petition, the exhibits, and y'all will have all the information y'all need. Trust me, it's 45 pages, and it's going to give you a much more information than the little 10-minute press conference here today. So I think you'll have a lot to look at, a lot to research, and a lot to talk about. But again, I want to thank all the leaders up here today. I want to thank them for standing behind parish government, standing behind this petition, standing behind what we're trying to do to protect St. Bernard Parish, to protect our political subdivision of the port, and to protect the citizens here who pay taxes to that port and expect our port to run port facilities because they do pay those taxes. Okay?
What are some of the biggest concerns about, this jurisdiction with St. Bernard not having a say in what happens in New Orleans? It does state this in such a parish.
What are the concerns?
Yeah, what would be one of the biggest concerns for the parish not having a say?
Well, I mean, it would be, if you're a St. Bernard citizen, I would think if you're in any parish, you would want your local leaders, your local authorities, your local commissions and boards to actually run and conduct business in your parish. We live here, we are invested here, we have kids, we have grandkids. We want, and that's what political subdivisions are, right? We want our local sheriff. We vote for a sheriff. We want that sheriff enforcing laws in St. Bernard Parish. We vote, for instance, parish president. We want our parish president handling the administration of St. Bernard Parish. That's who we voted for. Whether it be district attorney, clerk of court, assessor, that's who we vote for. This is very much the same. The port's not necessarily an elected position, I understand, but it's still people who live here, people who work here, and people who have a vested interest in this community. And that's why the laws are created as such. That's why you have to have jurisdiction in order to operate within the borders of a parish. And our Port Authority has that jurisdiction to operate in St. Bernard Parish. And, you know, I don't think any other parish in the state of Louisiana would appreciate the Port of New Orleans coming down and doing what they want, whether it be Plaquemines, whether it be St. Charles, whether it be St. John, right? They can just go anywhere and operate whenever they want. That's not how the Constitution of this state is set up, and that's not how the laws of this state are it's not how the laws are set up. I mean, basically, you know, that's the protection. In 1992, our legislators went and passed that law to give us our own port, right? And there's the governor, you know, ultimately appoints those commissioners, right, based on the local legislators' nominations of commission members. And those people live in St. Bernard or are vested in St. Bernard. So so when we talk about how it's set up and why New Orleans shouldn't be down here, I think that's very, very clear why New Orleans and their port should not be in St. Bernard doing whatever they want to do, because they don't live here. The port members in New Orleans don't. Why do they care if they tear our highways up, if they tear our roads up, or if they destroy a playground that we want? I mean, you know, it's just that this is our community. We want say-so, and we have the right to do that, and the laws protect us on that. The state constitution protects us from another political subdivision operating here. And that's what we're trying to do today. We're trying to make it very, very clear that the laws of Louisiana and the Constitution protect every political subdivision in every parish in this state. And we're just asking a judge to find that the jurisdiction of a port facility operating in St. Bernard Parish has to be operated by our port that we have based on the Constitution and the laws. All right? But anyway, if you say a lot, I'll sit up here talking forever. I'd rather, you know, go and do other things that we need to do. There's a lot going on today outside of this. I appreciate everybody coming, but I'm going to ask President McGinnis to close it out, say a few last words, and everybody have a good day.
Thank you, Brian. First of all, I want to thank you guys for being here today. It's important for us to get this message out to our citizens and to the region. Perry, thank you so much for you and David, the work that you guys have done to protect the citizens of St. Bernard Parish. Our job is to be a team. Doesn't happen all the time, but that's our job, and that's what you see here today. And some of the questions we've already got, right, are divisive. And that's what's been happening surrounding this issue for a very long time. But today, this petition filed by our district attorney on behalf of all of us, we all agree. And this we can all support and be a team to make sure that our citizens, for years to come, are protected. Thank you, Perry, and thank you guys for coming.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you all.